Greetings, fellow degenerates, and welcome back to the Hot Action Podcast for Week 5 of the NFL season. Week 4 is in the books, and what a wild week it was. The week started off with Bears versus Packers, and the game had everything. Had rain delays, outrageously dirty hits, and the Packers covering by like 20 points. The Saints hammered the Dolphins. The Panthers beat the Patriots at home, handing them their second home loss of the year. The Jaguars lost to the Jets in overtime. The Texans put up a 57-burger on the Titans. The Steelers hammered the Ravens. The Laser Cats came in and showed the Browns who was boss. The Lions look like a very real team, beating the Vikings 14-7. The Rams showed up and beat the Cowboys 35-30 in their own home. The Bills unexpectedly beat the Falcons. The Chargers lost by 2 to the Eagles. The Cardinals beat the 49ers in overtime, but the 49ers still covered. The Giants pulled a sneaky backdoor cover over the Buccaneers, losing by 2. The Broncos beat the Raiders. The Seahawks spanked the Colts after looking pretty crappy for a first half. And the Chiefs pulled the ugliest backdoor last-moment cover of all time, getting a quick touchdown after a field goal to win the game late in the fourth quarter. We here at the Hot Action Podcast went 9-7, which is our first positive week in the terms of pick'em. Unfortunately, our best bets went 2-3, but saving grace, again, we went through in Survivor. YouTube user Avi Glanzer writes, "You have Indianapolis with the spread, but Seattle in Survivor. Cake and eat it too much?" To this I responded, "No risk it, no biscuit." I thought this would be as good a time as any to try to split the middle on a bet. In the first half, it looked like it could have happened. I mean, Seattle was down going to halftime, but I was still pretty confident they were going to win the game. But in the second half, they opened unquantifiable amounts of cans of whoop-ass on the old Indianapolis Colts. I kind of felt bad for them by the end of it, except for Seattle getting a couple of pretty important injuries to their O-line and running backs. All right, some notable trends this week are the Bills are actually 4-0 against the spread and beating good teams. This is not what I expected. To me, it looked like they were trying to tank the season, but it turns out they're a pretty solid team, and I think that until they start losing, they're a team that you want to bet on, especially considering you keep getting points. Staying in the same division, another notable trend is that the Dolphins are hot garbage. Even against middling teams, they are managing to look completely unprofessional, and they do nothing good. They are a bet against team until further notice. I think we also need to collectively recognize that the LA Rams are pretty good. They are putting up a ton of points, and I think if you get points with them, you probably got to bet them. Another team that I think we can recognize is good this year are the Houston Texans. They look serious. I think they're going to win that division. They just keep throwing up monstrous results over pretty competitive teams, so I think they're a bet-on team. And for our final trend, I'm going to go ahead and say that the Ravens are dog shit. They've fooled me every week so far, and I think we know what's going on with them now. They started out all good, but injured, but now I feel like the injuries have actually caught up to them. They have looked like trash 2 weeks in a row. I really hope I figure out what's going on with them, but I'm going to claim they are bad. And then we come to the Patriots, a team who I think is good, but they are certainly allowing a lot of points. They are projected to allow over 500 points this year, so their offense is going to have to drag them to wins, which I think can still happen, but I'm going to be betting against them in terms of covering if the spread's big enough. And with that, let's get on to the pick'em, shall we? The first game of the week is New England Patriots at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 5.5-point underdogs, 5.5-point home dogs against terrible defense. I'm picking Tampa Bay. Give me the points, Tampa Bay plus 5.5. Then a nice Sunday start of 10 a.m. Thank the Lord, no more London games this week. We have Arizona Cardinals 2-2 at the 3-1 Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are giving up 6.5 points. To me, the Cardinals have just looked like total trash this year. They haven't played anyone good. They've only beaten teams really ugly. I think Philadelphia's looked really good so far. They're at home. I'm taking the home favorites. Give me Philly minus 6.5. Then we have the Loser Bowl, the 0-4 LA Chargers versus the 0-4 New York Giants. Both of these teams are the second winningest teams in their respective home cities. I am going to take the points. Neither one of these teams impresses me, but the Chargers get 3.5. More often than not, they lose by under 3. But I think the Chargers are going to win this one straight up. Give me the Chargers. Give me the points. I'm taking Chargers 3.5. Then we have the Carolina Panthers, 3-1, visiting the 3-1 Detroit Lions. Lions are 2.5-point favorites at home. For me, the Carolina, despite being 3-1, has not looked all that great. Detroit, on the other hand, has looked awesome, and I think should be 4-0, honestly. I'm taking Detroit minus 2.5. After that, we have the 0-4 San Francisco 49ers at the 1-3 Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are giving up 1.5 points. The line here is too small for me to really care about it. I know that San Francisco's 0-4, but the only win Indianapolis has is against the Browns. Give me San Francisco. I think they're the better team. San Francisco plus 1.5 points. Up next, we have the Buffalo Bills 3-1 at the 1-3 Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati give up 2.5 points to Buffalo. Even though the Cincinnati Lasercats have been looking a lot better since they got rid of Zampese, I am going to take Buffalo because they just can't stop covering. You got points, you get the better team. I'm taking Buffalo plus 2.5. And then we have the 2-2 Tennessee Titans at the 1-2 Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are a 2.5-point home dog. Usually in this type of scenario, I would tell you to take the home dogs, but this game gives me pause. You know, the Flying Hawaiian, Marcus Mariota, hurt his hamstring, and he's out. I would say that Tennessee has looked much better on the season than Miami, but ultimately, I'm going to have to go with my gut and just bet against the Dolphins. They've been so bad. I'm taking Tennessee minus 2.5. And up next is another game that's given me trouble to bet. It's the New York Jets, who are 2-2, visiting the 0-4 Cleveland Browns. Being that the line is only half a point, more or less you just have to pick the winner because it's only going to affect the outcome of the game in the event of a tie. So I'm going to have to go with the better team here. I think the Jets somehow have outperformed the Browns in basically every conceivable metric that matters. They've got some wins. They haven't looked half terrible the last couple weeks. I'm going to go ahead and take the Jets. Then in the last game of the morning, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2-2, visiting the 3-1 Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh gives up 8.5 points. I actually think that the Jacksonville Jaguars haven't looked that bad for the last few weeks. Pittsburgh impressed us last week, but it's been kind of all over the place. It's a pretty big line. But I'm going to have to go ahead and take Jacksonville just because I like the points. So that is Jacksonville plus 8.5. Then in the first game of the afternoon, we have the Seattle Seahawks visiting the LA Rams. Seattle are 2-2. Rams are 3-1. The Rams are a 1.5-point favorite. Now, it might be because I'm a Seahawks fan and I want to emotionally hedge, but I tend to think that the Rams at home is a terrible game historically for the Seahawks. I think their win last week is kind of a great setup for a trap game. I'm going to go ahead and take the Rams minus 1.5. And I'm sorry I can't bet the Seahawks because I'm too emotionally invested. Then we have the 2-2 Baltimore Ravens visiting the 2-2 Oakland Raiders. I tend to think that Oakland has looked a lot better than the Ravens this season so far, but Derek Carr went down in a heap last week. You have to give up 1.5 points to take Oakland, but I think they're the better team. And ultimately, they did not look that bad with E.J. Manuel in at quarterback. And Ravens have looked like total trash all year other than the very beginning. So, give me Oakland minus 1.5. Then in the late afternoon game, we've got Green Bay 3-1 at the 2-2 Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys are 1.5 point favorites. Green Bay has looked much better than Dallas all year. I'm going to go ahead and just take Green Bay. They're the better team. You get the points. Going to go ahead and lock that at Green Bay plus 1.5. And then in Sunday Night Football, we have Kansas City 4-0 against the Houston Texans 2-2. The Texans are 1.5 point home dogs. I was going to go ahead and say the 1.5 point line is too small. It's probably an overreaction to Houston blowing the doors off so hard last week. I'm going to have to go ahead and take Kansas City. They've been so consistent and so dominant all year. I'm going to take Kansas City minus 1.5. And finally, we have Monday Night Football. The Minnesota Vikings 2-2 visiting the 1-3 Chicago Bears. Bears are 2.5 point home dogs. I think the Bears are planning on playing Mitch Trubisky for the first time, which I said was going to happen week 1, but apparently it took them 4 weeks to figure out that they are terrible. So we've got a suboptimal quarterback battle, and I tend to think that Minnesota, being the better defensive team, this favors them. Chicago won't be able to get much going against that defense, I don't think. I'll take Minnesota minus 2.5. And as for my best bets, I'm going to be taking Minnesota minus 2.5, Kansas City minus 1.5, Philadelphia minus 6.5, Tampa Bay plus 5.5, and Detroit minus 2.5. And finally, that brings us to Survivor, where I will be taking the Minnesota Vikings. I also considered taking the Philly Eagles, but ultimately I thought the Vikings were the better bet. All right, and this week I want to introduce a segment called Hot Action Props, where I get your input on a subject that we will bet on. This week's Hot Action Prop will be, will Colin Kaepernick get a job this year? Will he get a NFL contract in the year 2017-2018? What do you guys think? Get at me on Twitter or in the comments to answer the question, and I will go over what you guys think next week. I tend to think he will get hired, so that is my answer to the prop, but I really want to know what you guys think, so get at me. That being said, if it moves, you can bet on it. This has been Matt Kerr at the Hot Action Podcast.